Welcome to the Tech Transform podcast by Oliver White Asia Pacific. I'm your host, Rod Hozack, and for the first time since Oliver White started the business more than 50 years ago, we're going back to the future and we're going to talk tech. With a wealth of experience in melding technology with business processes, I'm excited to face up to the challenge we're all going to have, and that is how do we leverage the tools and data we have now and capitalise on what is coming at us without ending up with an assortment of uncoordinated tools and data sets being used to arrive at different perspectives. After all, the goal in business should still be for everyone to be working to the same destination and same set of plans. We want to be with you on the journey, and as we learn, we want to share and help you navigate through this era where tech integration is not just nice to have, but it's going to be essential for maintaining competitiveness and relevance. Our mission is clear: to provide you with actionable insights and strategies that will keep you ahead in this dynamic tech environment. We've lined up a number of experts in planning systems and data management who are in the trenches now to give you a hands-on view. We will explore transformative insights from the last 30 to 50 years and peer into the future of tech in business planning. So be prepared to be inspired and equipped to face the changing tide of technology. So let's tech transform with Oliver White, navigating today, shaping tomorrow, and giving your career a head start by staying ahead of the tech curve. Our guest today is Niels van Hove, but before we speak with Niels, let's cross over to Olga Papageorgiou for what is new in the area of data management and AI. Hello, Olga.
Hi, Rod. It's great to be here again. So we've recently had an update from Microsoft, who unveiled a new quantum computing chip called Mariana 1. If you're wondering about the name, it's the surname of a famous Italian nuclear physicist who theorized a subatomic particle that plays a key role in quantum computation. For those of you who might not be familiar with quantum computing, these are computers that leverage qubits or quantum bits to perform calculations that would take today's computers millions of years to perform. Such computing power has the potential to help answer complex scientific questions. And of course, the bit that I'm excited about is supercharged AI. However, on the flip side, it has raised concerns about how the cybersecurity landscape will change as this technology basically deems current encryption practices redundant, which can be a bit scary, but we'll see how it all plays out. Prior to this announcement, there was a general consensus that this technology is decades away from being commercially viable. However, with this release, Microsoft are claiming that this is now only years away as their chip design overcomes one of the big problems that quantum computing chip manufacturing has faced, which is errors that are popping up in their chips. The scientific paper supporting the announcement is yet to be released, creating a bit of skepticism around the timelines that Microsoft has published. When the paper is published, we can get more insight into the feasibility of the claims. What does this mean for everyday people? What it means is there's a revolutionary technology that was going to change the face of medicine and chemistry, cybersecurity, and AI right at our doorstep. This creates a bigger imperative for organizations to build their digital capabilities to be able to leverage these advancements over the coming years. I'm excited, but I'm keen to hear our listeners' thoughts as always. Are you excited about the quantum computing age? Do you believe Microsoft's claims? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Olga. It never ceases to amaze me just how rapidly this environment is changing. Stay tuned for more. Welcome, Niels, to this week's episode of Tech Transform with Oliver White. Our guest today is Niels van Hove, and the topic is decision intelligence and the evolving field of agentic AI. Niels is currently customer engagement lead for Aera Technology. He's an executive coach, has been an integrated business planning program lead for George Weston Foods. Aera specialises in decision intelligence, offering the Aera Decision Cloud platform that integrates AI, machine learning, and data analytics to automate and optimize business decision-making. The platform collects and harmonizes real-time data, leveraging advanced AI to generate predictive insights and recommendations. Tune in for a deeper dive into the future of intelligent planning. A quick disclaimer, we have no pecuniary interest in Aera or knowledge of how it works, so we're just as keen as you are to learning more. Also, to contextualize this discussion, and before we dive into the formal questions, Niels, welcome.
Thanks, Rod. Glad to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
Can you elaborate just a little bit on decision intelligence, just to contextualize this for everyone?
At Aera Decision Intelligence, we call it the digitization, augmentation, and automation of decisions. Now, there are longer definitions out there, but the category was defined in 2022 by Gartner. But why do we need to digitize decision? Imagine before we can augment or automate. If we can digitize the whole workflow from action, decision, options or alternatives we have, analytics required for the alternative, and the data sources we need, the data elements for that whole pipeline of activities. Once we can digitize that, we can digitize from data to decision to action. And so that's what we call decision intelligence, the digitization, augmentation, and automation of decisions.
Another term we're going to use is intelligent agents, which means an agent that perceives its environment, takes action or to achieve goals, and may improve its performance with learning or acquiring knowledge. Is that how you would define it?
Wikipedia has quite a similar definition, Rod. And if we think about intelligent agents, it becomes a little bit determined. But the idea has been around for decades. We've designed a platform where we can deploy intelligence agents. We call them skills, and Aera Decision Cloud. We've been doing that since 2017. But yeah, an intelligent agent can perceive its environment, take autonomous action, and learn from it. So what I like to add is that it's not always about automation. If we go back to the definition of decision intelligence, it's also about augmentation. So if we not automate a decision, we recommend something to a human. That's where the interaction is. I find that more exciting than just automation where the human is involved. That's where it really gets interesting.
Well, I'm sure we're going to dig into that a bit more as we go. So thanks, Niels. Are you ready for the questions?
Yeah, bring them on. Let's do it.
All right. So question one. Niels, you've worked extensively with decision intelligence at Aera Technology. Could you share a practical example or a case study where implementing AI-driven decision-making has significantly improved a company's supply chain operations? And what kind of results did the company see in terms of efficiency and decision-making quality?
The first thing we can identify is that these use cases go across the industry. We're in CPG, large high tech, science, steel production, oil and gas, but also where you also can, and we're across the supply chain, across the source, plan, make, deliver a customer. So we see use cases as demand sensing, also traditional use cases as order allocation, which company. It's not a new use case, but if you have to do it across 12 or 13 instances of ERP, it becomes a massive problem for these companies. We see a lot of inventory use cases where you continuously calibrate inventory in a supply network. If you have a big network, you're a bit too much somewhere, a little bit not enough somewhere else, you can automate these decisions. Another observation is that it's a lot of decisions that are high frequent, a bit in the SNOE or ITP horizon, as you would call it. There's decisions there. They're so frequent. They're at scale at the network. The human can't really cover them all anymore. And there's 1 million decisions per year that we automate. Those decisions or scale of decisions, the human can't really cover anymore. That's where the machine comes in with the automation, providing a recommendation. Now, we see a lot of cost reduction, up to 50% of certain process flows, in value, $20 million for over a lifespan of a skill. But what I'm most interested in is that we help the human, so we reduce the workload with 25% or 30%. The planners and the supply chain professionals for 30, 40, 50% of their time, they're tinkering with data, they're analyzing, and especially in that very short-term horizon where you have to make a decision quickly, and you don't have a lot of time to make a decision. So and that's really interesting. Across industries, across the supply chain, focus on those high frequent decisions at scale. That's where intelligence agents provide a lot of value.
To summarize, I'm thinking the logic sitting in behind the decision it's still probably the same, if not slightly augmented. It's the power, the law of large numbers. I can contain and manage a lot of numbers, a lot of decisions, a lot of interactions very quickly with a set of parameters around intelligent decision making.
What all of White does as well, policies in your ITP and in what ranges can we make decisions between functions. Once you negotiate those policies, that's the input for an intelligence agent, because within the boundaries of the policies, now you can automate decisions because that's what you agree. But it goes hand in hand with good processes, good policies around that. Those policies become the boundaries of one or multiple intelligence agents that can make decisions autonomously. Outside the boundary, it becomes a recommendation.
So I know before we started this, we talked about you've got to put some work in to get some value out.
We can't just sit back. The human is always involved. It starts with the human and how we define process, how we want to solve problems, because that's the input for an intelligence agent, and then the boundaries around that, and our strategies and goals. What do we want to achieve? An intelligence agent doesn't know that unless we give the AI that information.
Well, that's a good segue to the second question, which is, with your experience in integrating AI and machine learning into business processes, what are some of the common challenges and pitfalls you've observed in organizations trying to adopt these technologies, and how can businesses navigate these obstacles effectively?
I just said, like, some of the things we do: inventory management, reallocation, stock out preventions. It's a lot of the short-term decisions, although we do other use cases. But one of the things, don't start too complex. Sometimes the client starts like, oh, let's take our biggest problem that we had for the last 20 years and let's try to solve that. But experience shows in very big companies, $100 billion companies, are like, okay, let's take a use case that we know how it works from experience. We agree how it works, what the output should be. Everybody understands how this decision should be made. Let's start with that use case, then design an intelligent agent and automate that whole process. So we can verify it, we build trust, and then we're like, okay, this works. Okay, human hands off. Now we've proved the concept. Now we can start building on that, make it more complex or other use cases. I have a vision around decision automation, about human machine augmentation. That's bigger than one use case, because if you only focus on that one use case, you can get stuck. Now we see companies having a vision of the frictionless supply chain, or we're going to augment the top 100 supply chain decisions. So now we have a goal, a vision. We start small and we start with one use case, but it's bigger over an overarching strategy. And after doing this for more than 5 years, I see that the journey is a bit smoother in those businesses. But you see some businesses, and we are big global, IT, $90 billion business, trying to do this themselves, like between, with microservices, trying to build something. And we've seen them doing it up to 3 years. They never seem to be able to scale this globally. So you might be able to build a little solution there yourself, but without the right platform that integrates the data, intelligence, automation, orchestration of decision, and the engagement with a user, that doesn't end well in terms of scaling. One specific one on forecasting. If you do machine learning forecasting, you just try to identify influences of that forecast. We got the sales history and prices. A lot of time, if you run those workshops, people get really excited, like influences this, external weather, everything. You end up with 15 influences. Then you run the machine learning algorithms, and it's maybe 2 or 3 that define most of the forecast accuracy. So it's also keeping that focus really on what problem are we trying to solve. Don't make it more complex than necessary.
Actually, a couple of takeouts I really enjoyed is that AI is actually going to get closer to the way humans think, and start basic, and it might be clunky, but it has the capability of learning, which means we can start small, learn, and then scale. But the other thing I heard was, when you scale, you'd still need to understand the platform and the technology for scaling.
Exactly. And how hard, or how you operationalize this at a larger scale. You can have one solution, but if you can't operationalize it at a larger scale, then you don't get the benefits. It's all about getting value out as soon as possible, but then, of course, over a life cycle as well. The longer, the better.
Moving on to the next question. In your work, you emphasize the importance of human-machine collaboration. Can you explain how this collaboration works in real-world settings, and how companies can ensure the human aspects remains integral to the decision-making processes while leveraging AI for efficiency?
For me, human always remain an integral part of decision-making, and AI. It's really a combination. And again, what you just said as well, Ethan Malik, Professor at Wharton, said this will improve every day. So if you talk about collaboration, I think it's one of the most overused words in business. But collaboration for me means you have the intent between functions, sales and operations. Collaboration means you have a common goal. But for me, it also means the intent to grow the other function. You not only want to grow yourself, you have the intent to grow the other, right? Which is a mindset and an intent. Now, if we take that to the human machine and working with intelligent agents, you also have the intent to improve that intelligent agent. And then you get back from that agent as well. You have to improve together. Now, that starts with the design. If I have 25 years experience in a certain process and best practices, if I design an intelligent agent and I digitize my decision process, I put all my knowledge in that design, in that agent. I guide it with goals and set the boundaries with policies, as we just discussed. That's all my knowledge. That's all pre-negotiated. It might be 25 years of experience, it's 10 years of experience in the business. Now the agent starts working. It provides me recommendations with explainability of these recommendations. Now the agent starts to help me. Explainability, I can learn from the agent why certain decisions can be made. I can accept a recommendation. That's often what we do in Aera. You give a recommendation, you can accept or modify. The agent learns from that. After you make 1,000 decisions, you can apply machine learning because you keep the context of every decision made. The machine can calculate the probability of that decision being right. So now I give you a recommendation plus the probability that it's the right decision. Now I can override that as a human, and the machine can also provide feedback on what I have overwritten and detect if I have a bias. So now I can learn from the machine. I create this intelligent agent, I get back, we learn together. And what we see in businesses now is that what we call product owners, they're responsible for multiple intelligent agents, but also accountable for the decisions they made. It's not just like the intelligent agent decide, the human who guides that intelligent agent is accountable for the decisions that intelligent agents make. So that's why the human can be out of the loop of the decision and the action. If we automate, the human remains accountable. And now what we see in some big organizations that have been on this journey for 4 or 5 years, they actually create organization structure where what we call a skill, an Aera, which solves certain problems, is reporting in that organization structure to a human. In short, collaboration, it's give and take, learn together. That's really my point of view.
There's a fabulous connection there that you're drawing. Often organizations and individuals, because I do it, I'll make a decision, then time separates the decision from the outcome. So I don't have the ability or necessarily the mechanisms or the will to go back and understand that original decision, which is part of what we try and put into organizations. But what you're saying is we can automate that as we learn together. That's brilliant.
Exactly. So if you make a decision to move stock from X to Y, if you have all the context in which we do it there, so you have the material, the location from, the to, the date, you get like 10, 20, 30 elements of that decision on that day. Once you do that 1,000 times, machine learning can classify what impacts that decision and predict. So if you record all those decisions, only when you record all decisions, you can learn from it. Aera does it automatically. We digitize it. But if you take it to an IBP process, ideally, we record our decisions and make them visible as well. So we can learn from them. It's a bit of a mindset change. In IBP, we still see those decisions maybe being recorded in PowerPoint or Word. They're not digitized yet, which is a big opportunity. If we keep those decisions and the context, we can start learning from them.
That's a massive unlock. Thank you. And it leads on to the next question. As AI continues to advance, there's growing reliance on data. What are some of the critical data considerations that business should be mindful of when deploying AI-driven solutions? Are there any data-related risks that business need to be cautious about to provide potential setbacks?
I have this question many times, and even 2 months ago in a presentation, and somebody said, "Oh, you assume 100% accurate data." No. I call this an organism. It's growing always. It's always moving. It's never perfect, but it's absolutely important. It's the input. And that's where, as with Aera, what we define is the 4 pillars of the decision intelligence. It's data, unconstrained, internal, external, structured and unstructured. Then being able to put intelligence on top of that, automate and augment it, and then engage with a human to voice or generate recommendations to execute a decision. Although your data might not be accurate, it's never a reason not to do anything. I see sometimes people throwing, our data is not accurate. And then I ask, what specific data? And Lorian Pratt, a machine learning expert and early decision intelligence proponent, says that about 90% of your predictive potential sits in 10% of your data. So what data? Let's be specific what we need. And that's where my big advice is as well. Think backward from the action and the decision. Alternatives you need to define your data needs. What we see now, and I see it all over IT, it's data push. Let's push all the data in a data warehouse, or sometimes we call it a data swamp. If you don't use that data for an insight or a decision, what's the value of that data? Think data and action backwards rather than push data. Be specific. If you don't have accurate data, Be specific what data you need for a decision. Of course, set clear boundaries and filters. We need to protect certain, you don't want to get customer data or people that use medicines or something, sensitive data need to be protected. Of course, understand what you really need. Don't throw up your hands instead of data push. We have an intelligent agent that automatically cleanse your data. So it looks at what's incomplete. It fills up that data. It can be with simple business logic, but also with more complex fuzzy logic. So we have actually now ways to continuously cleanse and complete and make data consistent. How that answers your question.
The data is critically important, but I like the idea. You set your direction first and then come back and say the data I have, is that the effective, what I need, which means it's an 80-20 rule. I'm focusing on what I need, not what I have.
Think about IBP. What do you want to have in your decisions you make in your deck? Okay, there might be information on KPIs and you look back a little bit or what's changed, but then it's like, okay, we need to make these decisions. That's the stuff we need in the deck. It's not different when you build an intelligence agent or you want to automate a decision. What decisions do we take? What elements of analytics and data are required? That's the data I need. Then I can be very specific on where I want to improve my data. Our CTO sometimes says, if you just put data in and don't use it, it becomes a data graveyard. I like
that one. Well done. All right. The fifth question, what do you think the future of AI is for companies and what preparation do they need to do right now in anticipation?
Yeah, look, I think, first of all, we can conclude AI is here to stay and it's going to be everywhere. Gen AI is not going away. Everybody's already using it. If you ever worked with it, it only gets better. It's here to stay. We can expect with certainty, because we already see that those short-term decisions in the supply chain are going to be highly automated, 50% plus. The more tactical IBP type of decisions, we'll see more augmentation there, more advice from a machine, because those decisions are too big often to automate. You don't want to automate an IBP decision, but we can increase the augmentation there and the digitization of decisions, so we can capture the context and learn from it. If I look at a company, you need to first of all have that vision again. This is happening. If you want it or not, you can be part of it or not. At one point, it's now a competitive difference. But in 10 years, it's not, because everybody will have it. So AI will only be competitive, or intelligence agents competitive different for so long until everybody does it. To be ready for it, I would say test it out, take the use case. But then also, start, Aera is a platform where you can build your own intelligence agent, your own skill. If you train your workforce, and we could help you with the first use case, but then what we see is center of excellence, that then companies take over and they start to build their own intelligence agent. Not everybody starts there, but that's ideally how you can start and then scale in your own company. So yeah, there's a couple of certainties actually of what's going to happen. It's here to stay. It will be, more decisions are being digitized, more data exploration, reporting analysis will be done in conversational style. And we can now ask, give me a report on the last deliveries from this location to that location. And Gen AI will create that report. So the user now has a conversational style interaction with the software. But then also you can ask, what are my biggest problems and what are the recommendations? The software will provide those recommendations. So now we have a conversational style. That's already happening. It's not widely applied yet across the globe, but the early adapters have been working on that for 4 to 5 years.
You've summarized well. I'll move on to our last question, which is from our client database. The question is, how can AI help the planning process and the decisions that surround those processes? A supplementary question, how can we integrate better across our B2B platforms and remove manual data entry?
I think the first one we already touched on a little bit, the planning process, the short term, the SNOE or ITP horizon. What will happen is that decisions will be segmented in the ones that are possibly automated and the ones where we really need the human involved, like NPD types of decisions where multiple functions, but we'll see that a lot of those SNOE decisions in the short-term future will be automated. Bit longer term horizon, as I just mentioned, the IBP types of decision. What I can imagine, if it's not already there, for example, automated gap detection. If I have a planning run and I know my target sales revenue and my plan comes 10% under, I can automatically detect that, run 5 scenarios or 5 different options, how I can close it, and make a recommendation on how to close that gap. That whole analytics can be automated. We don't automate the decision on what we're going to do. That's probably what we present in an IBP meeting. But the whole flow of getting the data, detecting the gap, can be automated, getting the data, doing the analytics, running different scenarios or simulations, then provide 2 or 3 options for the human to decide. That's stuff that can already be done. Automatic planning parameter, safety stock, MOQs, a lot of these things can be highly automated.
And then that question about across B2B, let's extend that a little bit. So from our customer to our suppliers, are there any case studies at the moment?
I actually have one. If you go back to data, who owns the data in our supply chain? Who has the most power in a normal manufacturing supply chain? The retailer. Because they sit at the end. They have all the consumer data. They have all the insights. They have near zero latency because they know when it happens, a point of sale scan. And then you go back, the manufacturer and supplier, subcontractors, or if you're the back end of the supply chain, you got this massive latency of data. Plus, you don't own any data, pretty much. So, as well as I do in Australia, retailers monetize their data. They sell it. If you now want to do a use case B2B, you just have to agree with the owner of the data of the common value of that. Okay, so that becomes a negotiation. What's the efficiency in our supply chain? I have a use case for you. One of our early clients has been on the journey for 4 to 5 years, a global $90 billion CPG. That's a manufacturer of many goods that retailers sell. For the largest retailer in America, the largest brick and mortar retailer in America, in the UK, and I think it was Mexico, and something, the 3 largest retailers in those countries took over the forecasting process. So it's not like the retailer say, oh, you buy the point of sale. No. The retailer gives the point of sale forecast. This manufacturer forecasts across these 3 regions for the biggest retailers at store day level, the sell in of the product and the sell out. Now, if you agree that use case with a retailer, the retailer doesn't have to forecast your product anymore. Maybe you can check your output, but now as a manufacturer, you know exactly, because this is your forecast, and I still have an error, but it's your forecast. The manufacturer has a higher incentive to get the forecast right than a retailer, because a retailer will get the product anyway. Now I can align my supply chain and my supply to that forecast. If I can prove, which we did with this CPG company, that the sell in and sell out at store day level forecast is more accurate than the retailer itself, why don't do it? But the retailer needs to provide the data. Of course, they own that data. So it becomes a negotiation of the efforts and the total value versus the monetization that retailer could get. So it requires a little bit different thinking there, of course, as well, Rod.
Yeah, although the common themes I heard is negotiation of the data, being able to get to a collaboration, and then that becomes a joint plan. Going back to the days of collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment.
That's been around for 25 years now. And theoretically, it's a beautiful thing. But did we really get out of that what we could? I don't think so. Maybe this is an opportunity, again, this client of ours is showing it across the globe with the biggest retailers. Let's maybe stop calling it CPFR. Let's just do it.
There's another methodology called flowcasting, which is the same thing. Take the retailer scan data and let that data be the requirements right through the supply chain. Again, great concept. Whether it's applied well, that's another question.
But now you have to scale that. So I know there's 8 million rows that has to be calculated daily, so that once you scale that, the growth and the scalability of data at internet scale becomes important, because you can imagine at store, those big retailers at store store product level, day level, that calculation power is there. In the cloud, online, we can grow data and calculation needs, unlimited almost these days. And that's what Aera does as well.
That's been brilliant, Niels. And thank you for spending the time with us.
All good. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Niels. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Tech Transform with Oliver White. And thank you, Niels van Hove. We hope you've taken some of the learnings of this practical assessment of business planning, data management, and readiness for AI. Remember, it's not just about having data, but taking a mindset that technology enhances human decision-making and not replacing it. Don't miss our next episode, where we'll continue the journey into unlocking technology to help facilitate better processes and decision-making. Make sure to subscribe and join us again to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in tech transformation. If you'd like to talk to us about how we can help your business with tech transformation, contact us at information@oliverwhite.com, or go to our website at www.oliverwhiteasiapacific.com. Let's tech transform with Oliver White, navigating today, shaping tomorrow, and giving your career a head start by staying ahead of the tech curve. See you next time.